Good morning. Where else would you rather be than a Zoom full of Penn Staters? I'm Paul Clifford, CEO of the Penn State Alumni Association, and I want to welcome you to the Penn State Alumni Association's Coffee Hour, where each week you'll hear the voices of Penn Staters talking about what they are passionate about. What you can expect to feel on Coffee Hour is pride and the power of the Penn State network. We are recording this session, and we'll be sharing that with other Penn Staters and hope that they are inspired by the stories that we share here with you on Coffee Hour. And today I am joined by Celeste Good. Celeste is the president of Penn State Queer Trans People of Color, affectionately known as Penn State QTPOC. Welcome to the show, Celeste.
Hi, it's nice to be here.
All right, we're going to start your video and ask you to come on. There you go. Excellent. So, Celeste, let's start right at the very beginning. Let's start with, for folks that might not be familiar with Penn State Queer Trans People of Color and your organization, talk a little bit about the organization that you represent.
So Penn State QTPOC has basically been an organization for queer and trans people of color on campus. We host meetings usually every week, general body meetings, and we talk about different issues in the queer and trans, like POC community. The organization is for everyone, so we also, allies come to meetings as well. We are always open to having new voices in the room with us because being queer and trans and a person of color is intersectional, and people usually don't know information about, even the term intersectionality is very not common for people to know. So
Sure.
we have so many different facets within ourselves that people aren't going to know about. Like, we have these different race terms, and then we have all these queer terms that people, I use in my daily this vocab in my daily life, but other people may not. So there's always some type of learning that comes with being in a meeting with us. And that's a great thing about QTPOC, is that you're constantly learning. Like, me as a president, everything is constantly changing, because we're in a world that you need to adapt to, especially with COVID and trying to run an organization at this university next semester.
Absolutely. So how did you get involved with the organization?
So originally my freshman year, I started on the Penn State rugby team. I tried out. I didn't know what rugby was. And one of my friends on the rugby team was a part of the QTPOC executive board and said, "This is a space for you. You should come to the meetings and see what you feel about this space." So I came, and I really did love the people that I met there. Some of them are my best friends still to this day. There ended up being a spot open on executive board my freshman year. So because I got to know everyone, they asked me to be the treasurer, and I jumped on the exec board, and I haven't left. So throughout my sophomore and junior year, I was the treasurer for QTPOC, and then this year I was the co-president with my friend Kayla, and now I am the current only president for this semester.
Okay, well, you alluded to this just a couple minutes ago in one of your original answers, but talk about what it's like to be president of Penn State QTPOC and what it's like to lead in this kind of environment, right? There's no playbook, right? Nobody's ever been through this. So how are you approaching this from a leadership perspective?
You're talking about the pandemic, right? And how?
Well, yeah, I'm talking about the pandemic and how that's kind of put all of us in kind of remote situations. You have a distributed organization now, right? People all over the country, and so they're still looking to you, calling upon you to lead, right?
Yeah, I think that with that, we need to realize that no organization was really ready for this type of, virtual having to send Zoom links and try to get their general body members to come, because it's very morale right now for students everywhere is very low, just because we're coming, we just learned that we're coming back to Penn State next semester, and it's hybrid. Like, some classes are going to be online, some classes are going to be in person, but coming back to campus is very scary, just because we're still in the middle of the pandemic and some people aren't ready for that. And with the option of being virtual, some people don't want to come to these meetings because it's so easy to say, I'm not going to log on. And membership retention is hard enough as a big minority organization. Membership is always hard for any organization to keep, especially when people are busy on campus, when they have, in my instance, I have sports, I have homework, I'm a kinesiology major, so
Right.
I'm constantly busy. And I don't blame people, because you can't force people to come to your meetings. We don't have an incentive, and we don't make our members pay for membership.
Right.
Other organizations have dues in order to be members, but in QTPOC we've never had dues, because it's not right, if that makes sense, to make people
Right.
pay to be a part of an org that's very much about who you are as a person. So now that everyone's going through this worldwide pandemic that no one was ready for, on top of the fact that we're a POC organization, and everything that happened with George Floyd, Breonna Taylor,
Right.
when we talk about Black lives, it's Black queer lives are also forgotten from that narrative. There were men like Tony McDade and Nina Pop. People are Black trans people are being killed right now, and their names aren't said with they're not the highlights. They're not
Right.
they're not the people on the big screen being why are these marches happening, because and it's a all Black Lives Matter type of thing, in which we as QTPOC, we're hit from all the different sides of being queer and being a person of color, and people just forget that. So we very much are an org that is being affected by what's happening in the world and the climate
Right.
we're in right now, so it's we're very much active on social media, because even though we're not in school, there's just so much to say about being an ally, or how to support Black people during this time.
Right.
That's another thing that we are going to have to navigate on campus, because not everyone on campus has the same beliefs as us. So
Right. Right.
we're going to walk through Penn State, and people are going to say things, and we have to also prepare for an election season, and
Right.
this I wasn't here on campus for the
16.
yeah, for the 2016 election, and I have no idea what it's like to be on a campus with, as there's going to be a lot of tension on campus. So even though we're here, we also, as student organizations, because I've been talking to other leaders, because we're very confused and very not nervous, but there's just so much to deal with this incoming semester. Because the only thing we know right now is that the involvement fair, the big involvement fair that happens every fall, that's on Hublon, you see so many people walk through it. It's even hard
Right.
to because there are so many bodies there. That's going to be online, and we just learned about that. So how is that going to compare to the Penn State experience that I know, and how is that going to affect the number of members that I'm going to be able to have, when no one really knows how that's going to work? Do we have to make YouTube videos? How are we going to get people to come to our table, or come to whatever that looks like? And the university isn't really telling student leaders what essentially that's going to look like. So we're all sitting here waiting for the university to tell us how to move on. How are we going to do officer training? That's mandatory
Right.
every year. Is that going to be on Zoom? There are just so many questions to be asked. And, we have to be adaptable with Penn State, but we have about 40 days until the semester starts. We
Right.
don't know a lot as student leaders.
Right.
We're having this coffee hour, and you're like, oh, so what are you as a leader, what do you have to do to prepare for this? And my honest answer to that is, I don't know.
Right. Well, you know, um, So a lot in that answer. This is the Penn State Alumni Association's Coffee Hour. I'm Paul Clifford. We're joined by Celeste Good, president of Penn State QTPOC. That's Penn State Queer and Trans People of Color. First of all, you're doing exactly what all leaders are doing right now, right? You're asking questions. You're anticipating the questions that you need to ask, right? I'm sure you're already starting to think about some of those answers, right? The way you ask some of your questions are already giving some of the answers, right? Do we do YouTube videos, right? So I know it's overwhelming, but the approach that you're taking is a approach that leaders take, right? It's yeah, we don't have a lot of information. Here's the questions that we need information around. I'm going to ask those questions, right? But I'm
Yeah.
also going to think about what the answers potentially are so that I can continue to lead my organization forward, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, all right, let's go back to Providence, Rhode Island, and talk about how you became a Penn Stater. Tell us your Penn State origin story.
So wow, back in high school, I used to do gymnastics at a facility called Aim High, and I did it for about 10 years. Wanted to go to college for gymnastics, but that sport is very demanding, and I ended up stopping my 10 years of gymnastics during my sophomore year of high school. But my first experience with Penn State was one of my friends was a Penn Stater who did gymnastics here, and I wanted to follow
Right.
his steps at one point, and then it got too much. So then I just didn't know what my plan was in high school after I quit. So I did track, I did other sports to keep me busy, but I just didn't know what to do anymore because I had a game plan. I was like, I'm gonna go to Penn State for gymnastics on scholarship. I won't have to pay as much money or graduate with a lot of debt, and like that plan fizzled. And then
Right.
I had to go look at like what are my priorities, like what major am I looking at, what schools in the country are the best in that so that I can go farther in life, and become successful. So Penn State was a big contender for number one, like since the beginning. And then I went to Penn State Berks because they're known for their kinesiology program. But I got to the campus, it was small, and I was like, I can't meet anyone this way. The amount of people I'm gonna meet is gonna be small, and as you can tell, like I like listening to people's stories. I need a big campus where I can meet many different people and many different points of view so that like me as a person, like I can grow. So I said Penn State was off the table my junior year after I took the trip down here, and I was like really disappointed because I was like, oh, I was so excited, like Penn State really was my number one school, and then all of a sudden I went and saw a branch campus and was like, this isn't for me anymore. And then I got accepted to a couple schools, looked at them, and like it was really late. It was probably April or something, and I had
Right.
already been accepted, and like all I had to do was accept. And I came here for the accepted students program and came here, went on the tour. There was so much walking, I didn't realize how big this campus was.
Right.
And my origin story is kind of funny. I was walking outside of the big library, and like I stood like right in front of the catabus stop, and I had like this moment of like deja vu in which I felt like I needed to be here,
Right.
and that's the reason why I came here. But my parents really don't know that that's the reason I picked Penn State in the end. But it was really off of a gut feeling. It was off of this feels like home, and like this is where I need to be in order
Yeah.
to this is where I want to be for the rest of my life because of like a feeling. And that may be cliche, that may be corny, but like that's what initially pushed me to be like,
Right.
where this is where I want to be, and this is where I want to continue my next 4 years of my life.
It was your catabus moment of clarity is what it was.
Yeah.
So in addition to your leadership role, you mentioned you were treasurer and then co-president and now president of Penn State QTPOC. but you're also involved in a number of other student organizations, Island Fever Dance. It's
Yeah.
easy to tell that you're involved with words, right? We've only been talking for 15, 20 minutes here, and I could see how you'd be involved with words. And you're also active with Black Student Caucus. So talk about some of your involvement with other student organizations.
Yeah, so Penn State Rugby is one of my big organizations that I'm also part of. As
Right,
I'm a student leader, I'm also a student athlete.
right.
Rugby has been a huge like stepping stone in my Penn State journey, just because I didn't think I was going to do sports in college, and then I just joined a rugby team, and I had no idea what rugby was. And
Okay, so that was my next question. So let me dive into this though, because you mentioned you came to Penn State and had never played rugby before, and then joined a rugby team that is at worst top 3 in the nation, right? I mean, they are always 1, 2, or 3 in the country. So how does that happen? Like,
um,
tell me that story.
my roommate matched on Tinder with someone on the rugby team, and it was my freshman year. I'd been here for about 3 weeks, and she was like, I need a wing woman. I need someone to come with me because I don't know. Like, I came to Penn State knowing maybe 3 people, but from my
Right,
high school, but like I didn't hang out with them. So I came here alone without anyone. And, it's just so happened that my roommate was also a queer person. And, they said that they wanted to go on a date, but in order for that to happen, the rugby person that they matched with wanted them to go to the informational meeting for rugby. So me being a freshman and the rugby team saying, "Hey, if you come to this meeting, you'll get free pizza," like that initially brought me to the meeting.
right,
And they did their slideshow, they did their spiel about like the team sport, the team aspect, what they did, what they stood for, and I didn't know what rugby was. And the most that I've known about rugby is that it's a blood sport, it's rough.
right,
And like, I watched a couple of videos before, and the women were massive. They were just like big and strong. And me sitting at 4'11" and maybe 110 pounds, like, I'm going to die if I
right.
attempt to play this sport. But I ended up going to the meeting and falling in love with the community that they've built, because there was someone else on the team who was very small, but they talked about how rugby is a sport for people of all shapes, sizes, and it's like such a diverse sport that me as a small person, like I play wing and fullback, and like those are back positions and there are forwards, and there can be someone else who's like 6'2" on the field, not as
Right.
fast as me, but strong as heck, and like both of us can be on the field at the same time and both excel exceptionally. And that's something I've never seen in a sport before. Like, you don't, like, when you see me, the smallest person stand next to like the tallest,
Right.
height order, you just like see the difference in size, in shape. But then you like see us on a field and like we have learned to work together, and just because like I didn't know rugby, like the learning curve for that, and like the fact that the program at Penn State is just so good. Like, Kate Daly is the head coach. The
Right.
program that she has created is phenomenal, like one of the top in the country, especially because I played with people who have been, my freshman year I played with this girl named Tess Fury, and she's played for the USA team. We have people who've been capped who play nationally and internationally, which is crazy because I joined the team with no experience under my belt at all, but because I got to play with these like world-renowned players who have been known in the rugby world, like I have been getting different training from them. And like, who can say that they ever played with someone who's played in the World Cup,
Hmm.
learning curve. And there's also this like ability to like watch other people who've never played with me, because we have our rookie class of like everyone who's saying, I don't know what rugby is, I kind of just tried out and was athletic and they took me.
Right.
And like I look back now 3 years later, where I've fallen in love with this sport, and have excelled. Like we've been to different like semifinals. We have we have 12 national championships as a club team, and we're not even varsity.
Right.
We're considered a club sport, but we're in between. We're a team sport. So we have some perks as a team, but we're such a phenomenal, and we have such a history at Penn State. And even though we don't get the varsity or perks of it, like we pay to play, and it says a lot about the people on the team, and it says a lot about like the motivation and how much we love the sport. So
Absolutely.
yeah, it has really like driven me, and it's like very much shaped me as a person. And then outside of rugby, QTPOC just sent me in like thousands of directions into the POC community. I'm a part of I go to Latino caucus meetings, APITA, which is like Asian American Pacific Islander, DESI, and like the Caribbean Student Association has become one of my favorite organizations, because it's just such a fun, lighthearted organization where you just talk about different issues in the Caribbean community. And like the best thing about all the communities I'm in is that you don't have to identify as that, because you can just like sit there. And like one of my favorite events is called FET. So it's basically like a big dance party. Like it happens on Hub Lawn or somewhere off campus, and you just get to have fun. Like it's like not one of those orgs where it's all like learn. It's not all like talk. It's just such a great place, and that's where I found my dance team. And like being a kinesiology major, I made friends with the captain my freshman to sophomore year, and she like I kept pointing out like your dancers are getting injured because you don't warm up correctly, or like I noticed this, and like that would help you if like you have a hurt ankle or something. So I kept coming to practice and saying, hey, like I'm noticing all these different things, and this is like what I want to do with my life, and they were kind of like, why don't we make you an unofficial type of position here where you can help us, like you can be a part of the team, you can come to our events, and you can also like make sure we stay healthy as athletes, and like having that opportunity, even though it's not, an official internship, I still got hands-on experience with athletes, and while being able to do that, I got a whole new set of friends, yeah, I've been talking a lot, but
It's amazing. It's amazing. It's and just the diversity of friends, from rugby players who play in the World Cup to the dance troupe here at Penn State. And so it's just an amazing journey. This is the Penn State Alumni Association's Coffee Hour. I'm Paul Clifford, and I'm joined by Celeste Good. She is the president of Penn State Queer Trans People of Color. All right. So we touched on it just a little bit in the beginning, but Black Lives Matter. When I say that, what does that mean to you?
I get precisely what you said when we talk about, me as a non-Black person of color. It's something that I've noticed. It's very hard for other people to even try to put themselves in the shoes of Black people, and it's not a thing that we can do just because being Black in America, or being Black in general, is just such a living with your skin and not being able to take it off it's the biggest thing, just because that's what you're judged off of for the rest of your life. So as non-Black people of color, we go through injustice too. And what I have noticed with that is that we only care about injustice when it happens to us, like talking about COVID, like I don't know if you remember headlines, but it was very much centered around like Asian people being the problem, and that wasn't the case. And we as an Asian community we were discriminated against because of it. And like we spoke out and we were like, hey, like COVID is not the Chinese virus. There are so many different things that happened between the process of like understanding what COVID was, while instilling fear in people, and seeing Chinese businesses stop getting business because the media was portraying them as the carriers when that wasn't true. We very much fought against that and spoke up. But I see the same people who spoke up for COVID and, you know, the Asian like disturbance, whatever happened, the injustice,
Right.
you know, silent about the Black Lives Matter movement. And it's very much a cherry picking, like what do I care about? And a lot of people who don't identify or who aren't Black see this as, oh, this is a problem, but it's not affecting me, so I'm not going to say anything about it. And that's where they're incorrect. And I mean, I guess it depends on your social circle, because if you're white and you just hang out with white people, obviously it's not going to affect you that much. But everyone has some aspect in their life in which they will have either a family member, a brother, a sister who dates a Black. Like, there's no way you can escape that type of connection with someone. So for people to be like, oh, this doesn't directly affect me, is very ignorant, because like I have so many Black friends, and like I don't need to have Black friends to say Black Lives Matter. You know, Black Lives Matter is such a moral thing that like I don't understand how people are against Black Lives Matter. And like there's so many misconceptions with the Black Lives Matter movement, especially when you talk about privilege and, you know, white fragility. You know, like whenever you say privilege and an uninformed white person hears it, they hear what I've done.
Right.
There's no work that goes into what I've done. And like, obviously, yes, like white people, you know, they work hard. Like, I'm not like discounting what they do. I'm just saying the system put in place is there to help them, versus Black people who have to try 10 times harder to get even remotely close to where white people are in society, you know. And, you know, Black Lives Matter, I just don't understand people who don't understand it, especially when you talk about police brutality. Like people don't do their research and expect Black people or educated people to educate them when it's not their job. And, you know, I like to say, you know, I have the emotional capacity, you know, to to try to educate people who don't exactly understand the Black Lives Matter movement, because I've been doing a lot of work here in State College with protesting. And you know, I don't know if you've heard about the 320 Coalition, but
I have not heard about the 320 Coalition. Tell me more about that.
So this is a local group that was formed after Osagi was shot at Penn State here last year. I was very much a part of the formation of that and trying to make sure that students had a voice in this coalition, because the DA released the results as soon as kids went home for the summer. And that was obviously a strategic thing so that there wouldn't be a huge backlash from the students. Because you know that if all the students were here, the protest would have been bigger. There would have been a lot more uproar about the injustice that happened, because, you know, people like to say that the murdering of Black people is always an isolated event. You know, it doesn't happen often, and when it does, you know, it's just, there are just so many excuses that are made when it comes to Black Lives Matter and police brutality in itself. So the 320 Coalition, it's made up of so many different parts. There's so many articles now, like in the collegian. So if you look up 320 Coalition on Facebook, you can find our Facebook page. We have an Instagram that we have started using a little bit more. But there are plenty of articles about the protests that we've been doing since, you know, Osaze. The cop that shot Osaze, cop number 1, we don't even know his name. And the big thing, the importance of that is the fact that we have Black students here at Penn State, and Black students here at Penn State have had so many bad experiences with police here. And we don't, as a university, talk about there's such a history of injustice at this institution, and we don't talk about the history of it. Black Caucus has a really good resource on the history. There's something called The Village, and I can't describe it in the best way, but you know, Fatima, who showed you who I was, who introduced us together, like Fatima could definitely tell you all about it. But like Black Caucus has like a Black blackhistory.com. I can send you the link so that you can send it out to the Alumni Association. But there's
Yeah.
so much history between Black people and this, you know, I hate to say it, but like white supremacist organization.
Sure. Sure.
You know, there's white supremacy rooted in every institution. And, you know, there have been, you know, we even talk about like Sean Stepnick. We've all heard about that. We've heard about, there's an article from Onward State about, like, you know, I don't know if they were lawyers, but recently there were these two alumni who, like, you know, had guns and, you know.
Sure.
There are so many things within our university that we haven't even addressed. And for this university to say we're inclusive, we care about our people of color, the actions don't add up to, you know, the all-in initiative that was brought to Penn State when I came here. Like, that all-in initiative didn't encompass every voice, you know. So when talking about Black Lives Matter, like back to the topic at hand, this, it's a revolution, but it's also, our narratives have always been changed. The media likes to portray us the wrong way, and it's so easy to do that in this time, you know. So with Black Lives Matter, it's very much a, you need to be educated to talk about it, and people just love to not, you know. There are so many resources out there. Netflix has
Right.
so many different TV shows, documentaries, like 13.
Right. 13.
Watch
Just, yeah.
13 any day you want. And the amount of work that Black people are doing right now in order to educate even me as a non-Black person of color, I don't know as much as I need to in order to help the Black Lives Matter movement in the ways that I can. You know,
Right.
sign petitions, donate, make sure you're, you know. And it's not all about like social media, because there's, you know, we don't talk about it a lot, but like the performative activism is a real thing, in which, you know, you can put on your profile, you can put a blacked out picture and say Black Lives Matter, and if that's the only thing you're doing, you're not doing enough, and you're only doing that to be like, hey, like, I stand with you. But at this time, a lot of what I've heard is it's not enough to be like not racist. You need to be like anti-white supremacy. You need to be anti-racist at this point.
Right.
Because if you're not making the initial stand, if you're not taking the time to educate yourself and talk to your Black friends, and like even if your Black friends are like, hey, like, I don't want to educate yourself, I'm tired, I'm going through a lot, like, especially like COVID, there are just so many facets of being Black, and like healthcare, you know, like, I'm not even going into that, but like there are so many different things in which there are so many free resources out there that you can go to, and people don't use them. And then, you know, they speak ignorantly, like on TV or like to me, and when I talk to them and then like give them the facts and tell them what I've been educated about, they're like, oh, like, I didn't know that, you know. And it's like, I shouldn't have to educate you about that, because Google is free.
Right.
Like, there's so many ways to educate yourself, and I like that's the thing I can't stress enough, is like there are so many resources that have been put out there that people don't use, and it's mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, it has certainly been interesting to see people's reactions to this. I mean, I get, and I don't want to equate situations, right? But I mean, you talk about injustice that you have faced, and while that is injustice, you don't want to equate it to injustice that Blacks have faced. But there, you know, kind of injustice has brought community together, right? That's what brought you to say, you know, injustice in my life means that injustice should be intolerable in anybody's life, right?
Yeah.
And you know, and I sit here, right? I sit here with the privilege that I have of not having faced injustice, right? Of not having that as a motivating factor to say, you know, I've experienced something, and now I'm going to go stand next to other people who are experiencing something, again, not equal, right?
Yeah.
But and so for folks like me who ask the question, right, what can I do to help? You know, if I want to know how to change a tire, right, I go to Google and learn how to change a tire, right? Or if I want to learn how to do a DIY project around my house, right? Or self-help, right? I Google it up.
Yeah.
It's funny. It is interesting that people, and I'm guilty of this as well, right? I'm not saying that I haven't done this um, with people that I'm friends with. Um, but yeah, I mean, there is some self-responsibility here that we need to go find some information ourselves so that we can be agile in some conversations like this, right? And that we are not asking to be educated, right? Asking you to educate me isn't me supporting you, right? Or isn't me supporting that community. So um, yeah, definitely heavy stuff. Heavy stuff. Well, I'm grateful for all you're doing in the community here. Uh, I think it's an important conversation. I don't think that it is it might have been inspired or sparked by a moment, but definitely needs to continue to be a movement that we all participate in.
Yeah.
Let's shift gears a little bit. Talk a little bit more about you. You're studying kinesiology, as you mentioned. What are
Yeah.
your professional aspirations?
I forever I've always wanted to own my own gym. Um,
Right.
a big thing with that is the fact that gyms are very much not a safe space for women, right? So I've gone to the gym, before I cut my hair,
Right.
used to go to the gym, and men in general in college are not they don't know what personal space is, and also they see a woman going to the gym by herself and are like, oh, like this woman doesn't know how to lift, you know
Right.
so like the times that I've gone to gyms, men have been, they come up to me and they're like, this is how you lift. And
Right.
then I have to like tell them and say, like, hey, I'm a kinesiology major, like this is what I'm doing for a living, so I don't need you to mansplain
Right.
how to lift. And like I feel like men need to talk to women a lot more about different things, because they don't understand how uncomfortable it is for a random guy that you don't know to come up to you in the gym and try to tell you how to lift. Or like men just like stare at you sometimes, like as a woman.
Right.
Like at these gyms now, like women can just like wear bras and like spandex or something like that, but like men like do like stare at women. And I'm just like, I'm here to work out, not for you to come flirt with me or talk to me, because I came here for one thing and one thing only. And
Right.
that's me as a person. That's not everyone. But the space doesn't feel safe as a woman. And like that's my own personal opinion, but I've talked to enough women on campus that have been like, hey, yeah, I feel pretty uncomfortable sometimes, because sometimes you're on a machine and there are 5 different empty machines, and a guy just stands right next to you and talks to you. Well, you have
Right.
hair, like you have headphones in, so it really, you look like you're busy and you don't want to talk to someone, and they make it their business to talk to you,
Right.
and that's like something that I personally have dealt with, and other people that I've talked to have dealt with. So me wanting to create my own gym it's very much I want to make a gym for women, and like obviously like men are going to be able to come to my gym, but it's
Right.
very much a safe space for women. And especially when we talk about like me being the president of like QTPOC, or have been in QTPOC for such a long time,
Right.
very much people who are non-binary get looked at very weirdly because of the way that they dress or the way that they express their gender, because it's not the norm.
Right.
It's very hard to be in space, because I've been called sir, I've been called young man, I've been misgendered all the time, when in reality, like I talk to my friends and I'm like, I get misgendered a lot, and they don't understand it because I look like a woman and like I sound
Right.
like a woman. So when people misgender me, people are like, oh, like I off first glance we just assumed you were a man because you have a short haircut, and
Right.
that and like when you think about that and how that goes with everyday life, and people who are like non-binary and do gender, sexuality, everything differently, it's not a safe space, especially when toxic masculinity is involved, or like ignorance is involved. And that's like when you talk about like trans people, like transgender people,
Right.
and body dysmorphia and different aspects of being transgender, I've talked to a lot of people about it, and I do personally want to make my own program based off of like, you know, transgender people, because, you know, the struggle with being trans sometimes is like wanting to get out of a body that you don't have, you know, and that's a big struggle for trans people. And, you know, not all trans people have that problem. Like some
Right.
are fine, like in the bodies that they have, and, you know, the way that they are trans is the way that they are trans. But there are others who are like, hey, like I have this body that, you know, I don't feel comfortable when I look in the mirror, you know, and like I want to make a training program that like will help them get, you know, the body that they want faster, so that they can start living their life without not enjoying what they look at in the mirror, you know. So
Yeah.
like that's what I want to do at my gym, is like very much a woman empowerment thing too, because, you know, like there's a lot of issues like men have with women who lift, you know, like they're too masculine or they're
Right.
too bulky. So like women, it's we can never do the right thing, you know, like we want to get stronger, you know, blah blah blah, but we look like a man. Or like
Right.
we're weak, you need to get stronger. But, you know, like it's always a coin toss, and it's always like why do we have to please men? And that's like
Right.
a big thing in our society, you know, and that's changing with like different cultures and like different generations, because, you know, old traditions, old values, like there's a reason they're still here, you know. Like
Right.
we, as when we become adults, we get set in the mindset of, you know, what we learned when we were younger, and like that's why it's just so much harder to talk to older generations and for them to, you know, without fact, like understand what it's like when the whole world is changing, you know, when it comes to non-binary people, you know. Like I believe that in the next couple of years, like being non-binary is going to be a norm, you know.
Right.
And like, right now it's not, and a lot of people are against people who are non-binary because they don't understand it, you know. And like me, I'm very much a woman empowerment type person, because me as a small 4'11" woman walking home alone at night at State College, it's scary, you
Right.
know. And I'm not saying you need to lift weights and get big or bulky in order, you know, to protect yourself, but like that's a real fear that women have, you know.
Right. So I'm not sure if you've ever tuned into a coffee hour, or if Celeste or if Fatima gave you a heads up, but we like to end every show with what we call the lightning round. And so I'm going to say and throw out a few things, and you just give me your immediate reaction. All right. So
Okay.
Sheets or Wawa?
Oh, Wawa, hands down.
Uh, your favorite spot on campus?
um the Arboretum.
Onward State or the Collegian?
um oh, that's
Onward State, the Underground, or the Collegian?
underground. Yep.
Okay. TikTok or Snapchat?
um I would say Snapchat.
All right. Favorite building on campus?
The new LGBT center. It's on the ground floor of the hub. It's beautiful.
Awesome. Um, your favorite pizza place in State College?
Brothers Pizza downtown.
Yeah. Netflix or Hulu?
Netflix.
All right. I think I know the answer to this one, but Starbucks or Dunkin'?
Dunkin'.
From Providence, you right? You have to pick Dunkin'.
Yeah.
I might know the answer to this one too, but your favorite Penn State sport?
Yeah, rugby.
Rugby. Favorite place to study, the library or the hub?
Hub, because I'm always there.
Yeah. And your favorite flavor of creamery ice cream?
Oh, coffee break.
Coffee break. That's mine too.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. All right. Just a couple last ones here. Some word association. When I say Nittany Lion, what does it mean to you?
Nittany Lion. The Nittany Lion is just like such a symbol of Penn State, and
Right.
you know, you don't like. Are you talking about like the Nittany Lion or like the mascot, the Nittany Lion? Because, you know, like both of them are just such a, like that's how you know Penn State. Like you see the Nittany Lion
Right.
on TV, or like I've had so many experience with, you know, the Nittany Lion, you know, high fives, hugs. Like the person who is in that suit has really affected the lives of so many people. And I hope that he understands what an impact he makes on like kids' lives, because you see him high five a kid and you see them like run back to their parents like with
Right.
like the most amount of joy that they've ever experienced for that that day, and they're like, oh my god, like I want to come to Penn State, I want to see the Nittany Lion again, like
Right.
much like a symbol of Penn State.
Yeah, absolutely. For the glory.
um for the glory, I just think about the alma mater.
Yeah.
uh,
Now I know you're not a member of the class of 2020, but when you think of the class of 2020, what comes to mind?
I feel like strong and adaptable, because historically they really
Right.
are the, I guess, only class that has ever had to deal with losing their senior year, because they
Right.
really went through the first half and we're like, this is great. Everyone gets ready for blue and white. Everyone was so excited. Alumni come, graduation, finishing your classes, having your last memories with your friends. And that was all ripped away from them. And I hope that they all come back, fall semester, because
Right.
I miss them. I didn't get to say goodbye to my friends after spring break. They never, they've been moving out, or they already moved out. And like for them to have to deal with that, because now there's a pandemic and now the job market is
Right.
No one's hiring. People had internships lined up and they were all can't, like that is a class that is going to go down in history for being so strong. And like they didn't have, like they never asked for any of this. Like they didn't have to be strong, they didn't have to be adaptable, they didn't have a choice but to do that. And I feel so bad for that class, because
Yeah.
like even my class, like we don't know what's going to happen in the spring semester. We don't know
Right.
what, we don't know how's going to happen in the fall. Is COVID going to hit early? Are the cases of COVID going to rise when everyone gets here? Like there are a lot of fears, and like these two classes right now are very much like, we don't know what we're doing. And like
Right.
sometimes the university reflected that in like how they have juggled COVID, but like who's supposed to know what to do right now? So like
Yeah.
the class of 2010 like has my heart and has so much empathy, because like I've talked to all my friends about it and they've been like, yeah, we're heartbroken. We never got we spent 4 years at an institution to not be able to walk the stage. That's
Right.
a huge defining moment in like someone in everyone's life. Whoever chooses to go to college, like you've worked so hard for 4 years, you put your blood, sweat, and tears into this university and your studies for you to have a virtual graduation.
Yeah.
It's such a difference in the atmosphere, and you're at home with your family, which like that's your family's gonna come anyway, but like your friends aren't there, your support system,
Right.
organization, it's not there, and it's not the same. So for that class, I have so much respect for them, and like the people that I know from that class are gonna do amazing things, and I can't wait to see what they do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Celeste, look, your energy is infectious and contagious. I hope that our listeners on Facebook and here in Zoom can feel that. You are fighting the good fight, and I'm just so grateful that you accepted my invitation to join me on Coffee Hour this morning. Thanks.
Thank you.
Excellent. And I want to thank everybody on Zoom for tuning in and watching, and everyone on Facebook Live. We have a couple minutes. Do you have a minute or two if somebody has a question?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. If you are on Zoom right now, you can go ahead and you could come off mute if you want to ask a question or make a comment. And if you're on Facebook, go ahead and drop that comment. Go ahead and drop the comment in the comments field there, and I will ask your question. I'm sorry. Go ahead and drop your question in the comments field, and I will ask your question there. Amelia Latham, she is on Facebook. She says, yes, thank you for reiterating that we need to educate ourselves. Google is free.
Yeah.
So excellent. Anybody on Zoom want to ask a question? Excellent. People are usually shy on these, so. All right, well, we will wrap up. Thank you again, Celeste, for joining me for coffee this morning, and good luck as you finish out your semester strong.
Thank you.
All right, be well. Bye-bye.
You too.